Hello viewers, Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. By the by, I am Moksha Hiremat. Language is as important as a life of man. It may be a medium of communication, but it is not a simple communication. In that communication, we have the life of a culture and civilization of a particular period, generation, and landscape, and etc. etc. For the growth of a language, taking and receiving from other languages is very essential. If you don't exchange the styles and cultures of that civilization and reason, to that extent, the language cannot be developed. Language shows the growth of a society towards better life. That is why knowing the importance, the history of a particular language cannot be denied. To know the history of a particular language and literature is a must. By that, you will come to know how the cultures are faced to each other, how the cultures have come together, how different cultures and civilizations are synthesized in the end. So, in this context, knowing the importance of language and literature is very essential. I would like to say something about this aspect in order to make the language and literature in which I live and love and do something for the development of society in particular and humanity in general. I hope you like this aspect of the topic, and I also feel you love the topic, and so I ask you to subscribe to Moksha Media. Dear viewers, most of us move from one place to another place. While passing, we meet so many persons, cultures, and civilizations. But we don't know them properly. Sometimes we take more from that language, from that culture, but we give a little to that culture, to that language and literature. We take a lot from the history of English literature and language, but we give a little to that language and literature. What happens if we take more and give less? Automatically, it will be a kind of imposition from the persons whom we take on the style of our life. As we continue to take more and more from that culture and civilization, to that extent our personality will be diminished, to that extent we will be submissive to that culture and civilization. In order to make an equivalent and an equanimity, we have to not only take but give to other cultures and civilizations. Most works have been translated into Kannada, but a few of Kannada works have been translated into English literature. This gap has been created due to so many things, but that gap should be minimized, otherwise we would become a slave mentally to that area. We would become a slavish community to that culture, language, literature and civilization. So in this aspect, I would like to introduce Kannada language and literature to the persons or to non-Kannadigas. I would like to introduce the Kannada language and literature to the persons other than Kannadigas. This is an essential nowadays, as our cities are developed more and more, as we get historical importance due to digital development, due to growth, due to transportation, due to a short and quick communication, due to the growth of digital media and etc., our places in Karnataka have got their own importance. In such a position, so many persons come and go to those particular places, and if we do not make them familiar with our culture and civilization, they think of others and they try to make us submissive forever and ever in order to serve their interest. That should not be happened. So we have to identify and trace our Kannada language and literature in which our culture and civilization is interwoven and which is inseparable from the life of the people of this area. Not only this, it applies to one and all in the world. But as I live in this region, in this area, I say something about this as I know it more and more. The history of Kannada language and literature goes back to 2000 years BC. Of course, Kannada is an ancient language. It is an ancient other than the languages which are there and which are very popular nowadays in the world. Kannada has its own uniqueness. Tamil, Kannada, Sanskrit, and etc. have got their own position in the history of languages. Kannada is belonged to Dravidian family of language. Until 5th century AD, Kannada doesn't have the script. It is not only Kannada, it happens to other languages such as Tamil, Sanskrit, Telugu and Malayalam, Hindi, etc. When Ashoka applied Brahmi script in the use of Pali language. After that, we have adapted that Brahmi script to write Kannada language. Kannada language may be old, but we cannot say the literature is also developed to that extent. When we talk of literature, we talk of recorded writings or recorded things. We may record the things in spoken form, but that gives a difference to the written form. When we write something, automatically it will be a written form. The record of written form would form a sort of literature. And of course, until 5th century, we don't have literature except the singing, dancing, and etc., which is the recorded in the spoken form. But after 4th century, that is in the 5th century, we have the written form of recorded document, that is the rock edicts. We have the rock edicts of Halmidi Shasana, which is found in 450 AD, and Talagunda Shasana, which is found nearly 70 years back of Halmidi Shasana, and of course Kappe Harabata Shasana, which is found in the 7th century. Talagunda Shasana is found in the place of Talagunda in the taluk of Shikaripura, previously in the district of Shivamogga. Halmidi Shasana is found in a village Halmidi in the district of Hasana, and Aryabhatta Shasana, Kappe Aryabhatta Shasana is found at Badami in the district of Bagalkot. See, these rock edicts say something about the written form, the recorded form of Kannada language and literature. But in the strict sense, that is not a literature. The actual literature of Kannada language is found in the 9th century AD. Here we can quote the work of Kaviraja Marga, written by Sri Vijaya. Some people alleged that it is Amogha Varsha who wrote Kaviraja Marga, but not Sri Vijaya. But most of the scholars do not accept it. They say Sri Vijaya was in the court of Amogha Varsha, a Rashtrakuta king, and it might have written by Amogha Varsha and Sri Vijaya. But most of the scholars accepted that Sri Vijaya wrote Kaviraja Marga. Of course, Kaviraja Marga is a treatise on poetics. That poetics includes prosody, meters, rhymes, rhythms, lines, beauties, appreciation of beauty. We can say Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram in short. It talks about these things. But here it is a wonderful thing, because in the 9th century AD, so many languages in the world don't have this poetics except Greek and of course Latin. But at that time, we have already created a literature which says something about the poetics, which is not that much of easy as we think. A commoner cannot understand the poetics. A commoner can read a poem, he can read a story, and maximum he can understand the essays sometimes. But understanding and appreciating poetics is not that much of easy as we think. So when Sri Vijaya wrote that Kaviraja Marga in the 9th century AD itself, we will come to know the potentiality of Kannada language and literature. Of course, that is in Champu form, that is in Champu style. Then what does Champu mean? Champu style is a kind of writing. It is a mixture of verse and prose. It is a mixture of poetry and prose. And there the writer or the composer goes on and on saying something about his feelings and thoughts in the verse form and in the prose form. Of course, that Champu Shaili was very popular in Sanskrit language and literature at that time. And that influence of Sanskrit can be seen on other languages, and Kannada is not an exception to this. And in the 10th century, that is in 925 AD, I think, that Vaddaradhane is appeared. That Vaddaradhane is the worship of elders, the actual meaning of Vaddaradhane. Shiva Kotyacharya wrote that Vaddaradhane, and that Vaddaradhane is the first prose work in Kannada literature. But some scholars thought that Shiva Kotyacharya was not written Vaddaradhane, but Brishnu. Whether Vishnu wrote that Vaddaradhane or not, now all the scholars to this day accepted Shiva Kotyacharya, who wrote Vaddaradhane. Of course, worshipping elders is a kind of thing. That Vaddaradhane is in the form of story, and that story explains the lives of Jaina Tirthankaras. And in the first part and the second part of 10th century, and in the first part of 11th century, we come across the poets Pampa, Panna and Ranna. And these poets are called as Ratnatrayas. That is, they are three gems of Kannada literature. Pampa wrote Adi Purana and Vikramarjuna Vijaya. Panna composed Shantinatha Purana, and Ranna composed Ajitanatha Purana and Sahasa Bhima Vijaya. One is spiritual and another one is social, and that Vikramarjuna Vijaya and Sahasa Bhima topic have been taken from Mahabharata, the great epic of India. Of course, as the time goes on and on, we have entered into the 11th century and 12th century. Of course, English literature has been divided into three types. That is Old Kannada, Middle Kannada and Modern Kannada. Old Kannada starts from 4th, 5th century AD to 12th century AD, and Middle Kannada is begun from 12th century AD to 17th century AD, and modern Kannada begins from 17th century onwards. This is one type of division. And another type of division is also there. That is the division based on religions. That is Jaina literature, Veerashaiva literature, Vaishnava literature, and modern literature. So like this, their four types are also classified. Both of them are acceptable, even though they bear the name of religion. They don't go away from the concept of humanity. Because in the old Kannada, most of the Jaina writers, or Jainism was prominent, Jaina writers were more, and they wrote using Kannada language and literature. In the 12th century onwards, up to 17th century, that Veerashaiva poets used different form of literature, and they enriched Kannada language and literature, though that is why it is also called Veerashaiva period. And after Veerashaiva period, we have the Vaishnava period. That is at the time of Vijayanagara Samrajya, we have Haridasas. And after Vaishnava period, we have the modern period. That is after the starting of British rule in India. So like this, these four divisions are there. But anyhow, whether it is 3 or 4, both of them are acceptable. It is for sake of our convenience, in order to make our study properly in the background of socio-economic, cultural and educational strata. This type of division is sometimes required, but it is for sake of study, not for others' sake. So anyhow, as we enter into the 11th century and 12th century, we have the entrance of Veerashaiva poets and Vachanakaras. Especially here we have to name Kondaguli Kesharaja and Jedara Dasimaya. Kondaguli Kesharaja is considered the first Veerashaiva poet, whereas Jedara Dasimaya is the first Vachanakara, Veerashaiva Vachanakara. When we enter into the 12th century AD, we have the Sharana movement under the leadership of Basava. That Sharana Chalavali creates a sort of atmosphere at that time, and that atmosphere was for sake of equality between genders. It is for social justice, it is for other things. So anyhow, so many vachanas were formed, were composed at that time. These Vachanakaras gave a voice to voiceless persons. They tried their best to instill the social justice in the society. They were against the caste, creed, gender discrimination, and varna, and they stood for kayaka and social justice. The new thoughts are required, new form of poetry or new form of writing. That is common. If there is a new form of writing, there is a new form of thought. If there is a new form of thought, there will be a new form of writing. That is what we can see in the history of any literature in the world. And Kannada literature is not an exception to this. So, the Sharana Chalavali has new thoughts. Those new thoughts required new form of literature, and those Sharanas found it in the form of vachanas. Vachana means saying the things already said. So of course, these are the sayings, these are the proverbs, these are the things which already people used in day-to-day life and etc. And they are confirmed to them, and through those sayings they stood with the uncommon people, with the people depressed, destroyed and diminished and declined the every human right. So thousands of vachanas were composed at that time, and thousands of people who did not know what did literature mean had come to the forefront. They composed vachanas, they read it in Anubhava Mantapa, the hall of experience in Kalyana at the time of Bijjala, and they gave a new shape to the vachanas at that time, and they deposited it there for the next generation. And after these vachanakaras, we have Harihara, Raghavanka, Chamarasa, Nijaguna Shivayogi, etc. That Harihara was an expert in Ragale. He brought a name and fame to Ragale. He composed Harihara Charit, Harihara Ragale, and Girija Kalyana. And of course, that Raghavanka composed Harishchandra Kavya, and Chamarasa composed Prabhulinga Lile, and these were Veerashaivas. And Nijaguna Shivayogi wrote that Kaivalya Paddhati and Viveka Chintamani. Viveka Chintamani is a kind of encyclopedia. He brought together all the topics, all the thoughts of the old days and the new days. He gives a new approach to his thoughts, experiences and feelings, and he talked of all those things. In Kaivalya Paddhati, he says something about the music. He says how the music can be carried us towards moksha, towards liberation. Of course, some people say Nijaguna Shivayogi is the forefront runner in creating that Karnataka music in Kannada. So, after these things, we come to know something about the Vaishnava period, in which Haridasas composed kirtanas. And here we have to say something about Purandaradasa, Kanakadasa, and Vijayadasa, etc. There are more. But Purandaradasa led them all. That Purandaradasa is also considered as the father of Karnataka music. Purandaradasa composed nearly 5 lakh kirtanas, and only 4,75,000 are found now, others are not found. Of course, that kirtana is a form of song. It is in the form of a song. It is composed, it is sung using the musical instruments, and at the same time making a nritya, making a dance. Through that dance, through that music, through that devotional song, the dasas, Haridasas, submitted themselves to Vishnu, and by that they wanted to have the grace of that Vishnu. By that they wanted to have the grace of God. So in this way, they submit themselves before God, and they try to get liberated from the pain and problems of life. And of course, they try their best to carry with them the common people also. As Vijayanagara Empire is withered as the time goes on and on, of course, the other cultures, other alienated cultures entered into India and they became dominant in Indian soil. Of course, these alienated cultural rulers came from Afghanistan, Arabia, Persia, Greek, Latin, Spain, Portugal, and England. Of course, last, that is, from the 17th century onwards, modern Kannada becomes very important. The rulers were changed. The old rulers gave way to the new rulers. New rulers destroyed all the cultural, educational, spiritual aspect of the ruled, and East India Company at last established its rule throughout India, particularly in Karnataka. After the death of Tipu Sultan in the Mysore battle fort, that British became dominant and they divided Karnataka into 5 regions. They created Bombay Presidency, Madras Presidency, and Mysore Princely State, Kodagu, and Hyderabad, Karnataka. That Mysore was an independent feudatory state, and some parts of Tamil Nadu and others, which were under rule of Wadiyars once upon a time, had been added to that Madras Presidency. North Karnataka was added to Bombay Presidency, and Princely State made independent a feudatory of British rule, and Kodagu was given to Kodagu rulers, and Hyderabad, Karnataka was tagged to Hyderabad Nizam, the feudatory of British. So like this, Britishers divided Karnataka into 5 regions, and by that they continued their rule in India and they stabilized their rule in Karnataka especially. The literature has taken a different outlook. It has created its own niche, that modern niche, which is quite opposite to the Oriental culture and learning. There was a complete clash between Western and Eastern culture, Oriental and Occidental culture. Due to this vice versa concept, so many intellectuals were in confusion and they did not know what to be followed and what not to be followed, what to be composed and what not to be composed. Some of them allied with the rulers and some of them opposed them, and anyhow the controversy went on and on. In the meanwhile, some Christian missionaries did a basic work in Kannada language and literature. Especially here we have to mention Herman Mogling, who created a sort of basic things in Kannada literature, and Ferdinand Kittel, who composed a dictionary, B.L. Rice, Jegler, etc., etc. In addition to that, we have more Indian prominent writers, Karnataka writers, Kannada writers. They are B.M. Srikantaya, Chamarajendra Vadiyar, that Kuvempu, Dara Bendre, Vikru Gokak, and others. due to the shortage of time, I cannot quote the names of all those persons. But when I tell you something about the development of literature at that particular period, I will say something about them. Though this in short is the history of English, is the history of Kannada language and literature. If we don't have this knowledge of history of Kannada language and literature, to that extent our composition, our writing will be limited. To that extent we don't contribute anything to the growth of Kannada language and literature. So, dear viewers, I hope you have liked it. And I ask you to subscribe to Moksha Media, which is the subscription is free. And if you are subscribed automatically, you will get the notification when the video is uploaded. See you in the next episode and namaskar.